Welcome to the second Quaker Parenting Podcast brought to you by SouthJerseyQuakers. Today I have Abby and Gloria from Mickleton. My first question is, what makes Quaker parenting different than other families and what makes it the same?
I think what makes it different is the way that children are treated by the community as a part of the community from the very beginning, even as babies, and their contribution is valued with a great deal of dignity, I think. Uh, I always felt that way. I was a Quaker kid, and what I loved about it was that I felt like the adults treated me as if I were like another adult in so many ways, not with, with age appropriate expectations, of course, but with respect. And it gave me a lot of confidence and a feeling that I had a place in society, in the community, right from the get-go. And I wanted to give that to my son, and I have found it most certainly in Mickleton Meeting, that all of the other members there take a part in making my son feel welcome, like he can just go and talk to anybody at any time and say whatever he wants to say, and they're going to be happy to see him and listen to him.
Yeah, we love Keegan. He's adorable. I still remember he was, 18 months old when you first started coming? And he would put his leg up and climb up on that bench and sit up there like a big boy in worship. It's just adorable. We loved him. My thought on that question, probably because I'm looking at it from another generation at this point, is that Quaker parents teach their children respect for everyone. And that's how, that's the whole basis of world peace in my mind, as, especially after having gone through a period of tearing, people against each other, that Quaker parents, encourage their children to accept differences and to just respect everyone for who they are. And if you start that early, it just makes such a difference in the world, because it's so hard to correct it later. I grew up in the Midwest, and whenever we talk about racism, I'm always a little puzzled because there were never many Blacks around. And that's part of the problem, Quaker children, if they just treat everybody equally, that's it. That's the bottom line for me.
Have you spoken to other parents about Quaker parenting? And did they bring it up or did you? And can you tell a difference with the people around you specifically?
I talked to some of the other parents who were with their children in library circles, story circles, and song, just like in our local children's circles, parents being with them. And you get a sense of each other. There weren't very many other fellow Quakers amongst them. And I was spotted before as having a slightly different style and approach towards my son and some of the other children, just who they all want to play with everybody. Children are so innocent, and when they're in a circle, everybody's game. But I lean towards the authoritative as opposed to authoritarian, which I think is also a distinction in most parental approaches with Quakers. And that was differing from some of the other parents that I talked to, and they'd say that they noticed in me. I mean, as in having structure, firm and structure, but gentleness and respect in your approach and application with the child. And Yeah, people would be interested to hear about Quaker experiences, but very frequently misinformed about Quakers even being in their midst, or not being Amish or Shakers, or it's just I had a distant family member wonder if we still used electricity. Um, not from around here, but it's a good conversation to have with everybody. It's just another opportunity to keep the values present and flowing, and the approaches evident in circles. You bring your own energy to whatever circle you go to with your child and live your truth. Other parents see that, they reflect on that, and they may take from that. And you sow love, you grow love.
Oh, that's great.
Can I prompt Gloria a little bit?
Sure.
We talk to each other, in our meeting, and it's just part of the reason I really wanted you here is because I value your opinion, and you have shown a great parental loving way to my son, and he loves you guys for it, you and Bob both. So what we discuss within our own meeting is most definitely valuable. And I think you should think about, I mean, even though you're not raising your grandchildren, you're watching them like a lot. You're a big impact on their life right now. You should definitely give yourself some credit for a hand in some kind of parenting with them.
Well, it's been a while since I've been with them with other children. So that's why I was kind of blanking on that bit of it. And while I have a different a way, the authoritarian, that was always discipline was always a question mark for me. How do you teach children to respect others without being heavy-handed, like you say, the violence aspect of that was always kind of tricky for me.
Do you think children lack anything growing up in a Quaker household? And has it brought up by any parents? And have your kids brought anything up?
Mike, I don't worry that I'm doing anything wrong. So, I feel like I'm raising the kid with the values that I want him to hold dear. I worry about bullies and bully culture. I, it's in the books, in children's books. I make sure to bring that in, and that's my best solution right now, especially in COVID times, to just get as diverse library in our own home of books as possible, and bringing home books and books and books from the library all the time. But about different life situations that children encounter that wouldn't necessarily be their experience with some of the other Quaker kids, probably, because when the other Quaker kids are around each other, they're in an atmosphere where bullying is very much discouraged. But that's not everywhere. There are plenty of places where there might be a parent egging their kid on to make trouble or dominate or set terms for play that I don't think is kind, moral, or Quakerly. and it's just reality. It's most of the rest of the world. And if anybody's ever said anything to me about their concern about possibly putting him in a Quaker school, or just Quaker communities, like, are you worried about him being your kid being in a bubble, not being able to deal with a less moral, crueler part of culture? that is very real and very present. What can we do but, arm our kids to disarm with peace and kindness? No illusion about the existence of cruelty, but to show love as much as possible and peaceful dealing.
The first thing that actually came to mind when I think, does a Quaker household lack anything, was violent toys. and my grandchildren are not being raised in a Quaker household, and they have so many toys. I mean, it makes me go back partly to simplicity. They just have so much stuff, and it just blows me away sometimes that, it's just nothing to them. And I think there should be more value placed on things. And well, not that things are important, but that they don't need so many things. But they also have guns, and huge guns that shoot these Nerf bullets, and of course the Jedi, all of the Star Wars. They're 8, but well, 9. They're 9 now, though. The twins are 9, and they're really into the Star Wars, and they've got their Jedi swords and all that they play with, which I remember we did a toy gun exchange many years at the meeting house as kind of an outreach, that at Christmas time we invited any kid in the neighborhood that wanted to bring and turn in a toy gun. And we had gifts that we would take them that were nonviolent gifts, sort of like a grab bag thing. And when I was purchasing gifts, without thinking of it, I bought an airplane, but it was kind of I guess it was a military airplane. And one of the other parents said, no, that's not a gift that we give someone who's turning in a gun, is a military airplane that's going to drop bombs or something. So that's one thing I think, and there's all sorts of variations of Quaker parenting. Everyone's a little different, but I think most Quakers shy away from the violent toys.
Just as a quick aside, kind of going on what you were saying, Gloria, when I was a child, I was raised Quaker, and when I went to, I think it was pre-K, and this was at a Quaker school, all the kids were talking about things like, I think it was like Power Rangers and a bunch of other, childish but still, violent stuff, and I didn't know what they were talking about. So when I say what is a Quaker household lacking, I don't necessarily mean it in a bad way or a good way. I just mean it in a kind of like what you said. So, but thank you. That was a good.
Carleton, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as I was reading over these questions, I was thinking, Carleton was raised in a Quaker household. I'm curious to get his opinion on these too.
Well, that leads us into the next question now, doesn't it? Do your children, or did your children go to a Quaker school? And if yes, do you think it made a difference? And if not, do you think it would have?
Well, I can speak to that first, because my children did go, and kids are all different. It made a bigger difference on one than the other. The schools are expensive, and we did have to take them out. We weren't able to stay the course, unfortunately. And one of them did okay in the public school, and the other one suffered in public school. And there are a couple of teachers at the local Friends School now who were students all the way through the same school. And when I see them, I'm thinking, oh, I wish our older son would have been able to be one of those, because when he was in first grade, he said, I just want to come back and be a teacher here. And of course it didn't happen. So I would say friend schools are worth, every penny you pay for them. So, some kids in the schools were difficult and don't always get, that there can be issues. I mean, it's not always peaceful and what you would expect. And I know teachers work really hard to, at the way they treat the children and hope the atmosphere of the whole school goes. But they have to be, when they're interviewing kids to accept into the school, they do have to look for kids that thrive in that type of environment also. That's not for every kid either, but it's a wonderful environment for those fit into it. It's just makes for superhuman beings.
My son actually has an interview for entering into pre-K this Saturday. So we're beginning our journey and hoping that we'll be able to stick it out, but who knows with time. We'll see. I suspect he's going to love it. We've gone and attended events there before, and the community, he seems to feel very comfortable there. And like I said, I want it for my child because I do value that there be teachers and community that is grounded in our testimonials. That's right when you walk in the door. It's a morally based core to the reason for learning together and working together. And I feel like that is different from public schools, at least that I attended. It's just what's the binding factor? What are we all working towards? Where's our school pride? Is in our mascot? I don't know. Yeah, I prefer that the school pride have to do with Quaker spices and everything that those stand for, and that reinforces what it means to be gentle and kind to each other. And that, of course, children aren't all going to be that way. There are going to be children who are having a hard time. Mine probably will have a bad day too and need to be told, no, you don't do that to another kid. But there'll be somebody there to do that in the manner that I would. I expect that's what the teachers and the administration is there for. That's what they care about. And also I worry that the way politics is now, there's a discrepancy about what is true in our climate, in science, and in history as it happens, interpretation of actual facts, that things that really shouldn't be debatable. I worry where anywhere that might be debatable being the teacher. And I feel safer that I'd be in agreement with the truth of the teachers at a Quaker school, certainly in the ones in this area, in Mullica Hill area. But I absolutely agree with everything Gloria said about it being, it seems to be a great place to raise wonderful human beings. I want that for my son, but I want it for all the kids. I care very much about our community and his peers and his generation. The more the better, that are looking out for each other and having an awareness of how best to have compassion, empathy, and care for each other, help each other move up, be better together. I think a Quaker school holds those values in the right light.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may just give my personal experience, since Gloria asked, I've had every single type of schooling possible except for boarding abroad. And I went to Quaker Friends School from pre-K to fifth grade, and it was either the first best or very close second best experience I had behind homeschooling. And the one problem I ever really had with it where there were a number of students who were a bit into bullying, and it was the non-Quaker students. So the one things Quaker schools can really do to improve, in my opinion, is to get more Quaker students. So thank you both for advocating for it.
Yeah, and the expense is a drawback. And so we keep trying to build up scholarships and make it more affordable for Quaker families also. And that's a part of being able to raise the number of Quakers in Quaker schools.
How did your children react to going over to other children's houses? Was it a positive reaction, or were they exposed to anything you didn't like? Did they have anything they didn't like particularly?
My experience has been somewhat limited because of COVID. We did have play dates with a few friends that we made right at the point that during my son's second year, but pretty much his third year has been spent in relative isolation from other kids, except for Zoom opportunities. And we've had one friend play date that we try to keep. And I really feel like their parents are like-minded. So it hasn't been a problem. He hasn't had that much my son hasn't had that much opportunity to venture out where there are kids with differing life situations that might be surprising for him.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage of the Friends School is the friends they made that they spent time with outside of school had pretty much the same values. So that's another advantage to the Friends School.
Mm-hmm. Have you prepared for when he does encounter something that maybe you haven't really gone into very much? In other words, like at some point they'll probably encounter a violent video game or something. Have you prepared for that?
He's already kind of got his own alarm system. He was watching Caillou this morning on PBS Kids, and Caillou in this episode fell on his knees and playing and bruised his knees. And I'm in the kitchen making his breakfast, and he comes in, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. I don't want to see this, So, on some level, I don't fear his longing for some violence that's missing in his life. His general reaction to seeing it is being fearful of it or wanting to step away from it. But again, though, this isn't preparedness. I came in with him. I didn't just turn it off. I said, oh, let's watch for a second together and make sure we see that he turns out okay. This works out. Because, of course, we know this program wants to show that there's a way of getting to the other side of a traumatic event. And so I would like to show as many things. There are ways to get to the other side of traumatic events. And that's a way to look at them or violence. Look for the other side of it. Look for a way through it. It's not an end that's desirable. If you see it, he'll respond with the set that we're instilling in him at this point, at this time. And I don't think it's probably healthy to try to keep it from him. If he goes and sees violent video games and he's repelled by it, well, then he can check that off his list of things he's seen and done and doesn't need to do anymore. And if he decides that he really wishes he could play them and comes up with more questions about it, then we'll talk about it.
Well, thank you very much. I have one more question. So, what is your advice for new Quaker parents or parents who are looking to raise their children the Quaker way?
I think in general to follow, I know spices is kind of a trite thing, but it's a general mindset. Integrity is so important right now. And I have one of my grandsons, I call him a trickster. He'll say the opposite of everything you say. And sometimes I just have to say, Julian, people trust you when they know you're telling the truth. And if you're always saying no to something that's obviously yes, then can they trust you? So integrity is important. Community, which is where Abby started with, our Quaker community, in the meeting community is a warm place for children. Simplicity, you don't need a lot of stuff. And respect for all human beings. That's my bottom line.
Somebody wanted to be a Quaker parent and wanted advice. I guess just sit with your meeting. Have your child sit with you in the beginning and let them have that experience and be gentle in that experience. If they resist, give them whatever way that the child shows you they need to find what's good about sitting in the light with their community in their own way, in their own time, whatever's appropriate, because that's where it all comes from. It's where it flows to and flows out of. So all the rest, what Gloria said, if somebody wanted to be a Quaker parent, then they must have those values in there somewhere. Just to explore what it's like to be sitting and waiting in worship, alone and with friends. I could tell a funny story about sitting this way with my son that I have told Gloria. In the pandemic, Keegan and my son and I went to Mickleton one day. We were there on an errand. We were there taking pictures. But while we were there, it was a beautiful day, and we had a chance to sit in the benches in the back area, and I asked my son if he'd be inclined to just sit there quietly with me for a moment and remember what it was like to be in meeting and sit there and be in meeting. And he wasn't really in the mood because we were outside and we were doing things and we were playing and it was spontaneous. But I said, please humor me. And he's like, okay, I'll be Bob and you be Gloria. And that was his way of pretending we're meeting. And he sat there quietly for a minute and said, I love you, Gloria. Which was my cue to say, I love you, Bob. And so that was,
Yeah.
it's true. But it was a good moment of being in meeting in his way, in the way that he needed it to be, and essentially what it should be at the same time, even though it was silly can be. So
kind of a way to mix in pretend and also, that's wonderful.
Great story.
Yep. Well, thank you very, very much. If there's anything else you wanted to say, you can say it now. If not, we'll wrap up.
Quaker values are really, really wonderful to instill in children, because if you get those as a base in life, then you're not having to relearn things later on. Maybe I could share another story. I don't know if this is appropriate or not too, but at one point, Abby, you did say love in the household is the most important. And I have really enjoyed this year of sitting with my granddaughter when she does her virtual days. She was doing a virtual day around around Valentine's Day. And they had them try to write a story. And she had, with open-ended questions. The question was, they had a story about raining something. And so they had to draw a picture. If it was raining, would it be raining? And she said love. And she's in a kindergarten. She actually wrote the word love coming out of the sky, different loves coming out of the sky. And I had two boys, and this granddaughter was unexpected. Then we had two grandson twins, and then, a granddaughter. And it was really the first girl baby I parented or, grandparented. And so we have a special relationship. So that's very special. I'll share that. I don't know if it's to put it in, but love is important.
That's sweet. Well, thank you both so much. I guess that wraps us up. Thank you both, Abigaile and Gloria. Bye.